Hello and welcome to the Middle East Forum Speaker Webinar Series. I'm Stacey Roman and I will be moderating this discussion today. We're pleased to have Ofra Bengio, a professor at Tel Aviv University and head of the Dayan Center's Kurdish Studies program, here to discuss Kurdistan's moment in the Middle East. Professor Bengio will speak for 15 minutes and open it up for questions. Should you wish to ask a question, please use the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen to type out your question. And now, with no further ado, I'll turn the discussion over to Professor Ofra Bengio.
Good afternoon, everybody. When I published my book, Kurdistan's Moments in the Middle East, it was really the zenith of the achievements of the Kurds in all three parts of Kurdistan. In Turkey, they managed to send, for the first time in Turkish history, to send to the parliament a Kurdish party, which gained some 13% of the votes, which was really something irregular. In Syria, the Kurds of Syria managed to defeat Daesh and to build for themselves a strong autonomy. And of course, in Iraq, they defeated Daesh. They managed to accomplish and to conquer some 40% of the area and to have a referendum for independence in 2017. But then by 2018, all three started to experiment with setbacks, one after the other, like a domino effect. It started with Turkey when there was a coup, and they put most of the activists of party members in prison, especially the leader of the Kurdish party, Selahattin Demirtas, adding to the other leader, Öcalan, who was already in prison since 1999. Then in Iraq, after the referendum, all the countries surrounding them were attacking them, and almost they lost most of the area which they have conquered from Daesh, and they experienced a severe trauma such as they have had before. And then in Syria, Turkey started to attack the Kurdish region and to take back Afrin and other areas which the Kurds managed to conquer with Daesh, paying some 11,000 Kurds in Syria and more than 1,000 in Iraq for fighting Daesh. So, but now what are we looking for is right now, what kind of let's say, Kurdistan, parts of Kurdistan we are having. We can say that all three parts suffer now from socio-economic problems, from the COVID problems, etc. But we can say that each part has its own mode, its own struggle. For example, in Turkey, now we can say they are in a mode of survival because, as I said, most of the party members are in prison, and there is a severe pressure on all members of the party and severe persecution, such as not allowing to use the language, etc. In Syria, we can say that this is a struggling mode because they are trying to defend the little autonomy which they have achieved and fighting three enemies at the same time: Turkey, the Syrian government, and at times also Daesh. So we have now to look at the more promising part of Kurdistan, that is the Kurds of Iraq. The Kurds of Iraq have been enjoying autonomy for some 30 years, and this helps understand the more successful part of Kurdistan. Still, we can say that they too are now witnessing severe challenges. I can mention 4 main challenges which really are very difficult for the Kurds of Iraq. The first challenge, as I mentioned, is the socio-economic challenge, which was caused by the fact that Baghdad did not allow the payment for the wages for the Kurdish workers, so that for some time now there is quite a kind of um, um, let's say difficult times for the Kurds in Iraq itself. In addition, the COVID problem, where the Kurds, like in Iraq, in other parts of Iraq, are suffering a lot, and they don't have all the utilities to help them in this. But the main problem is really the ongoing rivalry between two parties in Iraqi Kurdistan, the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan and the Kurdistan Democratic Party, or we can say two extended families, the Barzanis and the Talibanis. And what's the problem? The main problem is not just the struggle for power, which started since many years ago, maybe 40 years ago. But the problem is that each of the two is oriented to a different partner. For example, the Barzanis are oriented to Turkey and the Talibanis to Iraq and to Iran, which helped these two countries to divide and rule the two partners and to help or to stop, solving the problem between these two main partners in the Kurdistan of Iraq. There's also the problem of intra-Kurdish, problem of the Turkish Kurdish PKK, which has its basis in Iraqi Kurdistan and which is using the land of area of Kurdistan in order to attack to carry attacks against Turkey. This complicates the problem very much because then Turkey has built its own bases inside the Iraqi Kurdistan, and it is attacking the region, the Kurdish region in Iraqi Kurdistan, and in this way they really jeopardize the stability of the Kurdish region. Another main problem is the the thorny problems between Baghdad and the Erbil and Baghdad and the Kurds. And what we have seen since 2017, since the collapse of the referendum and what was the aftermath of the referendum, Baghdad is trying to suffocate this autonomy in many ways. For example, it tries to not to allow the census in the disputed areas between Baghdad and Erbil. We are talking about some areas where they are rich with oil, and the two parties are trying to have them as their own part. But the problem is that, and the constitution allowed to have a census there in order to see what the population wants. But since 2003, the central government is trying is evading this census and this referendum. The other point is it's trying to stop sending the budget to the region because of some oil problems and other financial problems. And so all in all, there are a lot of problems between Baghdad and Erbil, and even let's say the amicable Prime Minister Kazemi is not so able to solve the problem because of the pressure of the Shi'i militias, which are actually the main force in the region in Baghdad. The question that I would like to ask is, what should the Biden administration do, and what the Kurds can expect from this new administration? Can they hope for better treatment than that of the Trump administration? Because the Trump administration, as we know, as the Kurds see it, they betrayed them both in Syria and in Iraq and even in Turkey. So the question is if there might be a change under the Biden administration. So I would like to remind you that Biden was the most pro-Kurd ever in the United States, supporting them in various not just in words, but he came very often and met the Kurdish leaders and was for the federalization of Iraq. The question is now, when he is in power, he will be true to his promises. I would like to say that from, as I see it, it is in the interest of the new administration to both help solve the problems between Baghdad and Erbil, and even to see the entrenchment of a strong government and stable Kurdish region. And why is it so? For various reasons. First, the Kurds have remained the most reliable and pro-American power partners in Iraq. I should write to remind you that while more than 4,100 soldiers have died in the Iraqi part in Kurdistan, not one soldier died since that time, since 2003. The other reason is that the Kurdish region is very rich in gas and oil and very stable, so that entrepreneurs, American entrepreneurs and others can try to find some enterprise in that area. If for any reason it seems that the American forces might be forced to leave the Baghdad, the region, the Arab part of Iraq, they most probably can find a safe place in order to relocate to, and this is to Kurdistan. And we are seeing, for example, that there is now a big, I wouldn't say embassy, but a place like an embassy being built in Erbil, because they believe, the Americans believe, that this is a most stable and most secure area in Iraq, and not just in Iraq, maybe in the whole region. This is what we can see, that the KRG, or the Kurdistan region of Iraq, is a very secure area. There were some problems here and there, but we cannot compare them, for example, to the attacks of Daesh, which are mainly carried against Americans, against the central government in Baghdad, and against the Shia militias. And so far, the Kurdish region has remained quite safe from these attacks. The other thing is, I think, supporting the Kurdish region may send a strong message to both Iran and Turkey to prevent their encroachment into the region, into Iraq, and in this way weaken the pro-Iranian forces. All in all, I would like to say that it's only the future will tell us if whether the Biden administration will be able to preserve the Kurdish autonomy, support it to remain strong against the pressure of three states, which are really, as President Biden himself says, are ready to eat it if it wants to get into independence. So in the future is beyond us, but otherwise, I think that the Kurdish region of Iraq hold strong promises for continuing to be an autonomy and not surrender to Baghdad. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So the first question in is, are the Iraqi Kurds currently part of the central government?
They are part of the central government, but we are talking about a federal system, which the constitution started back in 2005. According to the constitution, the government should be according to a federal system, so that there is a strong autonomy of the Kurdish region. But for example, the budget, it should get the budget from Baghdad and other things. But for example, if we are talking about how strong this autonomy, we should say that there is a parliament, a Kurdish parliament, a Kurdish minister, they have their own flag, their own anthem, so that this is really a very we can say this is a state within a state. The formula is federation, but we can say that this is a state within a state.
Thank you. Is Israel actively helping the Kurds at the present time?
I think that this is a very problematic issue because in the past we know it helped the Kurds a lot, but I think since 2017, after the collapse of the referendum, the Kurds are very uneasy about any relations with Israel because of the pressure from Baghdad and the surrounding countries. Any help that Israel it is doing, it's behind the scenes certainly. I mean, it's not like when Netanyahu declared his support for a Kurdish independence. It's far away from this now because it seems that such declarations were more harmful than supportive for the Kurds.
Thank you. So we have a question in here. You pointed out the Barzani and Talabani rivalry is a key challenge to hampering KRG's progress toward greater autonomy. And you also highlighted the US role. Which of the two dynamic, the internal and the external, do you think will be a greater factor in preserving or furthering the Kurdish political aspirations?
I think they are interrelated because if we go back to the referendum, had it been without, I mean, the PUK somehow supported the militias to enter into Kirkuk and to make all the experience, to collapse the experience. But for example, if the United States would have said something supportive for the referendum, not to call for an independence, but to support this move somehow or to prevent the attacks by Baghdad, it might have been, the story might have been different. So I think the two are interrelated and you cannot disconnect one from the other. Because if the internal problems are not solved, the Americans will not be able to help. But what we can say on the whole, the United States have supported a lot in bringing the two parties together. If we go back to 1997, 1998, it was the Americans who brought the two parties together and managed to contain the problem between them until now, we can say. So the role of the Americans is, you see how interrelated it is. I mean, they should first pressurize the two parties, but also pressurize Baghdad to solve the problem with the Kurdish region. So I think the role of the Americans is very crucial. If I can say one word, very, very crucial.
Understood. Thank you. So the problem with the Kurdish nation is regional stability. The existence of a Kurdish state landlocked and surrounded by foes would be in constant conflict with others. Can you address this stumbling block?
The stumbling block of how can they overcome this stumbling block?
Correct.
Again, I think this is the great power is very important here. The external support, the UN support, the EU support, but mainly the American support, because I think if the American support comes and even just stopping Iraq from attacking or doing things against the Kurds, this might help them to overcome this stumbling block. And but yeah, this is a main problem. But we know of other countries who managed. I would like to bring very important example, and this is South Sudan. South Sudan suffers from the same problem of Kurdistan. And when the United States supported the referendum there for independence, and then immediately the independence itself, now South Kurdistan is an independent country. So that's why I'm saying that this is so crucial. The American role is very crucial, but maybe the experiment in South Sudan was not so helpful. It was not so successful. That's why maybe the Americans have a second thought regarding Kurdistan or supporting Kurdistan. But I think the situation in Kurdistan is much better than South Sudan in many ways. Their governability, by the way, is much better than Baghdad itself. This is very important to note. Why was I stressing support to Kurdistan? Because everybody knows that now Iraq is a non-state. They call it La Dawla in Arabic. It's a non-state. And we are talking actually about two non-state actors, which is the Kurdistan party and the Arab part.
So is there any unity among the Kurds to form this Kurdish state?
No, we cannot say that there will be what the Kurds are dreaming of Kurdistan Mezin, they call it Greater Kurdistan. This is inconceivable in what we are seeing. But in my opinion, if there would be one region where they can build a strong autonomy, and from this that it will turn it to be into a free country, maybe those Kurds from other parts may come and help, and but the problem is that there is intra-Kurdish problems among themselves. What we can say that the leaderships in all parts of Kurdistan or the elites are fighting each other in a way, not fighting literally, but are rivals. For example, PKK is a rival to KDP and to PYD, etc. But on the, let's say, level of the people, then you have a strong support to some, Kurdistan Mezin. So you see big difference between the leadership, the elite, and the common people. You have a strong identity of Kurdish identity among the people and a strong willingness to have some independence, or at least to, get rid with all these sufferings throughout the last century. But the leadership, this is the problem. The elites are rivaling, are rivals against each other.
So where do the Kurds in Iran stand in all of this?
Mm-hmm. This is a very sad story, the Kurds of Iran. It's really, why is it sad story? Because in Iran, it was, established the first Kurdish state in 1960, 1946. There was a small state, we call it the Kurdistan state or Mahabad state, and it survived only for some 9 months, but it granted the Kurds all this, the flag, the anthem, everything, and the feeling that they can do a state of themselves. But since then, I think the world has forgotten about them, and I think this is a great misunderstanding or misuse of the Kurds of Iran. It's it's I can't understand why the United States did not help the Kurds of Iran at the time when the Iranian government is so anti-American. I mean, this is really something which I could not understand neither under Obama nor under the Trump administration. And I think this is really, these are the forgotten Kurds, but they are trying, they are fighting, but nevertheless they are forgotten everywhere. Nobody tried to support them.
So along those lines, why would the Kurds believe the US given past action?
They shouldn't. If I were Kurds, I should prove that I am better than anyone else, and I think this is the main mistake of the Kurds, is that they give, all their military force, all what they can do, because they believe that in the last minute or in the final analysis, the Americans will support them. But then, as we have seen in Syria and in Kurdistan of Iraq, the Americans did not stand by them. But in my opinion, their mistake is not to write down the rules of the play before going into the play. This is the main problem of the Kurds. I think they are very strong militarily. They are very good soldiers, good fighters, courageous fighters, but not so strong in diplomacy and politics. And this is something that they should learn in the future, in my opinion, and to see how can really use what they have to contribute in order to contribute to themselves and not just to the world and to America or the others.
Thank you. So at this current time, where do the various Kurdish entities receive their armaments?
They don't have so much armament. This is only, light armament. Um, Lately, we know that the Americans supported the Kurds of Syria somehow with light armament, and also Iraq in the Kurdistan of Iraq. But it is nothing, like they don't have neither tanks, they don't have airplanes, so any airplane can come and just finish them in a very short time. This is the main problem. They are strong on the ground, but they cannot fight. When, for example, when the attack from the air against the chemical weapon, when Saddam Hussein used the chemical weapon against them, bombarded them from the planes. What can they do in such cases? So, I mean, they have some light weapons, but it's nothing. They cannot withstand the tanks and the air force, etc. And now, when Turkey is also attacking them from the air, the PKK gave them the ground to attack. The excuse the Turkey to attack inside Iraqi territory, inside Kurdish territory in Iraq, because they seem to be dangerous to Turkey. So the Kurdistan of Iraq is suffering from different parts.
Understood. So if there was an independent Kurdistan, how different would that be in effect from the current autonomy of the region?
Now they are not free to do what any other country would do. I mean, they don't have, let's say, they are not included in the UN. They cannot do their own foreign affairs. They cannot buy their weapons. They cannot sell their oil. They cannot sell their gas freely. They are dependent on Baghdad. They are dependent on many other forces. So what means is how independent you are. I mean, independence will enable them to do many things if they manage to do it correctly. But now they are not, for example, whenever Baghdad decides to weaken them, it's going to do so because they have no other alternative. They are part of Iraq, and if Iraq decides not to send the budget or not to reach an agreement on disputed territories, they cannot move without this.
And for our final question, is there any chance for an independent state for Kurdistan?
I used to believe that there is a chance, there was a chance. I thought that maybe 2003 was a good time for them to try and get their independence. I also thought that might be 2017 when, Daesh was finished and Baghdad was weak and the American might have supported. There were some times, these times, but maybe the young generation will see. Maybe you will see an independent Kurdistan. I hope that I'll hear it too from somewhere. But otherwise, for myself, I hope very much that they will have. I mean, they really suffered too much, and they owe it. The world, owe it to them to have their own state.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you.
For our viewers, please be sure to join us Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern for the weekly update with Ashley Perry. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you again.
Bye.
Bye.